I'm at the University of Toronto. There's the European cathedral side of the campus, the older part, and then there's the modern factory side of the campus, and it's soul deadening. My building is made out of cinder blocks, you know, and my brother-in-law, who's his own sort of genius, calls that hosable architecture. Anything could happen there and you could wash it away. It's like, and it's just, I have my students now and then sit in a classroom like that and look at it and tell me how it makes them feel. Random wires hanging from the ceiling, you know, nothing but cinder block, the cheapest form of construction, nothing that's beautiful, pure, boring, dull utilitarianism with these bare, shiny desks and terrible fluorescent lighting. It's like, it's ugly right to the core, and it's corrosive. It eats away at the heart of the university, which is about the beauty that's eternal. And that isn't optional. It's not impractical. It's the most practical. It's that upon which the idea of practicality itself is predicated. And people should be flocking to the universities, dying to be educated, because they are dying to be educated. I have dozens of young men who come to me all the time after my talks and say, look, they give me a note. One did last night. Here's the note. 6 months ago, I was deeply suicidal. I had no reason to live. I was completely nihilistic. He said, I started watching your lectures. I started to adopt a more responsible outlook. I realized that that was important. I started to try to tell the truth and to put myself together. And without that, I wouldn't be here. And that's a little note. And that happens over and over. You know, and then I go talk to journalists, and this happened in Scandinavia. It happened with this GQ interview I just did. Well, your message is primarily directed towards young men. It's like, and there's this judgment about that. It's like, oh, there's a problem with that, is there? I mean, that wasn't the point, but that is the audience. It's what, there's something wrong with talking to young men and encouraging them? It's like, that makes me somehow suspicious.
The hatred of humanity that is present in that critique is mind-blowing.
It is, it's absolutely beyond belief, and you think, well, it's only misogyny. It's like, no, it's not. It's like, what? Who are you leaving for the women to have as partners? These demolished and weak men.
Well, it's a zero-sum quality of it. I mean, as if lifting up any human being is not a good for all of us. I mean, that's the whole point about the necessity of our care for the oppressed, is because they are part of us.
No, you only care about them in groups. The individual oppressed person is irrelevant. It's the group of oppressed people that's relevant. And so if you just help one person, oh well, you see, then that flies at the heart of the collectivist doctrine.
You said something very, very powerful when you talked about people should be flocking to the universities. You know, an image that comes to my mind is the image of a fountain, and you know, people come to the fountain to drink, to slake their thirst, and it seems to me that we need new institutions of higher education.
That's the fountain of living water.
Yes, right? Yes.
That's why Moses is a master of water in the desert.
Yes.
So he's not a master of stone. He's a master of water.
Yes. And one thing that really excites me, Jordan, is that what we see right now is this longing. So many thirsty people. It seems to me we simply need to build new fountains, because, you know, as you say, the books are in the library. We can give a rebirth to the past in the form of the hunger and thirst that are in young people, simply by feeding it. And that it seems to me that there's a kind of cultural passivity, particularly when it comes to the university. People will say, oh, well, you know, you could never do anything about that. Well, you know, they're just, well, you just have to kind of write them off. Well, why do we have to do that?
Well,
why can't we start new ones? There have been thousands of universities started over
the students come into the university and they've got this facade of cynicism, you know, that partly because they haven't had great experiences with the educational system, and it's no wonder, and partly because...
Well, it goes all the way back to the beginning.
Yes.
I mean, you've talked about this in your book, that the university, what moves in the whole K-12 educational system, in a certain sense, was founded in large part to bring about that collectivist control and to stultify and to annihilate the freedom of the individual. And so that's pretty well ingrained by the time someone comes to university, and no wonder they don't like it. They don't think they like educational institutions.
Yes, well, but they're still desperate enough to come, and they might say, well, I'm doing this practically because I need a degree to get a job, which is, you know, reasonable. It's perfectly reasonable. As a fragmentary ambition, it's a good fragmentary ambition, but they're their core is dying for something deeper than that, and they're coming to university the way that you enter a cathedral properly. If you enter it properly, they come prayerfully, they're hoping, but they won't talk to anyone about it. They're hoping, God, I hope that what I need is here. And if you provide that, then they're just overwhelmed by it. And then they're motivated to work and to move and to put themselves together, because it doesn't take much water to really transform a parched surface. And these young people, they have their cynical facade, and it's easy to be intimidated by that, because they're judgmental in their lectures and in your lectures, and maybe they're not paying attention and they're snapping gum and they're playing with their computers. But there is part of them that's at the back listening and hoping that something will emerge that will captivate them, and when that happens, then that's when it becomes something absolutely remarkable to be an educator, because then you're providing guidance, and you're providing the guidance that's the bread that's more than mere material bread. And then the students are extraordinarily rewarding to work with, because they're so, it's not pleased, it's way more than pleased. They're so engaged by what's happening that the whole thing comes alive. That's when it's a great thing to be an educator. And it's been great for me to go on this lecture tour, which is why I keep doing it, is because every evening it's like that. I get 2,500 people in an auditorium, and I start talking about the things we've been talking about. Everybody's dead silent, and they're locked onto it. And it's an unbelievably gratifying process. And then people come up and say, oh, this has been so useful to me. Things were so terrible and falling apart in so many ways, and like all of a sudden I'm just stacking these things up and putting them together. It's so interesting watching the young men who come and talk to me, and it's young women as well. And well, not always just so young. Many of the women come and say, thank you very much for what you've done for my sons, for example. But the men come up and they say, it's like they're telling me a secret, and it's the sort of secret that you'd only tell an intimate friend that you trusted. It's like, man, I wasn't doing so well. And these are often rough-looking guys, They say, look, I've been really trying to get my act together, I've been working it out with my wife, and I've been trying to get my relationship with my son straightened out. And here's my father, by the way, he came along with me, and we're getting along just fine, and it's really working. And they say it in a hushed voice, and they say, thank you very much. And I say, great, that's so great. I'm so thrilled to hear that. And they're telling me that because they're hoping that I would, in fact, be thrilled to hear that, because they want to tell it to someone who would be thrilled to hear it. And I am thrilled to hear it, because I do believe that that redemption is something that is accomplished at the level of the individual. And every time you hear someone say that they've oriented themselves properly, it's like a bell rings in heaven. It's exactly that.